sure. And it's really, I really hope that we can get some participation going today. So, and it's always really nice for me to understand where people are from and what you do. So, do post in the chat box, and Sue's going to bring up the Q&A a bit later on. And I do like a good Q&A, so it'd be great to hear from everybody.
Okay, that's great, Louise. We can all see your screen, so I'll hand over to you now.
Excellent. Thanks, Sue. Okay, hello and welcome on this Wednesday lunchtime. So my name is Louise Hosking. As Sue has said, I'm the Executive Director of Environmental Health here at the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the importance of the work that we do here at the CIEH, a little bit about our history, and the critical role that our members play as environmental health practitioners, working within local government as regulators, so environmental health officers, also within government organisations, within charities. We have a lot of environmental health professionals working across the military, and of course in the private sector. So a little bit about me. I think probably I've been a member of IIRSM for quite a long time. I'm not quite sure how long, and I've specialised in the latter part of my career in terms of health and safety, and I'm sure those on the call will probably recall that I was the IOSH president in 2021 to 2022, but I actually began my career as an environmental health officer. So I qualified at Nottingham Trent, and I worked for Cambridge City Council as an EHO, and I've just moved back to Cambridge, so I've done a complete full circle in respect of my career. But I've always felt that having a career and a background in environmental health has given me some real spokes to the wheel. And I think IIRSM is all about risk and the broader perspective of risk perception. And that really fits well with us at the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. And as I'm going to describe, environmental health is a really broad aspect and a broad church, looking at health both within our organisations but reaching out into our communities as well. So it's always been the driver for everything that I have really done within my career. And I've had a great career that really has a strong environmental health background, which has enabled me to really focus on health, and I think that's an important focus for us all at this time. So what am I going to cover today? I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction into CIEH and my role here at the Institute. And then we're going to talk about how environmental health can give organisations a much broader perspective on social sustainability. So we know that organisations are increasingly looking at their ESG credentials, at sustainability. And I think, in general, organisations understand their direction and their journey in respect of the environment, and also governance, because that's very well-rounded. But I'm going to challenge those within the audience to consider the broader aspects of social sustainability through an environmental health lens. I'm going to look at where mental health and wellbeing fits into all of this, and then talk a little bit about our challenges and how you can get involved. So there's a lot of writing on this slide, and I'm not going to go through it all in detail, and we will make the slides available should you wish to have a look at them afterwards. So within my role, I oversee a directorate that is made up of our policy and campaigns team, events and conferencing, and also member engagement. So looking at how we involve volunteers in the work that we're undertaking, how we engage with our members. And I work very closely with our presidential team. So I've done a full circle there as well. So as well as having been a president myself, I work very closely with our president here at the Trust Institute of Environmental Health, who's Mark Elliott, which is really great for me to be able to support, having been in that capacity myself. So what is a typical working week for me? We are an organisation, and our members expect us to be strong in respect of our policy outputs and also our advocacy. So I have a role to increase member engagement and really reach out to new audiences to raise the profile of environmental health. And a lot of the work that we're doing is we actually work quite closely with governments and non-governmental agencies to raise issues that we feel that our members really care about. So I do have a really busy agenda, busy week most of the time. I've also got an executive role, which means that I'm working with the rest of the senior leadership team here at CIH to support and ensure that the organisation continues to operate effectively as well. So who are we at the CIH? So we're a membership and an award body. We are a chartered organisation, so we're the only organisation that can offer charterships in respect of environmental health. We also have a cousin organisation in Scotland who is able to do the same as us as well. So that's REHIS. So we don't actually operate in Scotland. We very much value our partnerships. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that a bit further on. So we're a professional body, we hold a Royal Charter, and we're a not-for-profit organisation. And we're really here to bring together the 5 pillars of environmental health, which I am going to go on to describe. So our charitable objectives are to promote and disseminate all aspects of environmental health for public benefit. And we are very strong on the work that we undertake to advise and assist governments and non-governmental organisations. And I think that link between our members, who are mostly local authority environmental health officers working at the sharp end to enforce regulations and to educate their communities, has always meant that we're very close to the political agenda. So I'm going to talk more about what we're doing that as we move forward. We promote education. We work very, very closely with our universities and colleges that support environmental health qualifications, particularly degrees, master's degrees, and PhDs also. So our vision, very much for a safer, cleaner and healthier environment for the benefit of all. So we're an organisation that's looking at health not only within the workplace, but also across our wider communities. And this is where my challenge for this audience really lies, in really starting to think about actually how do we manage risk within our organizations, and how does that risk affect the communities that we're actually working within. So our values are around inclusivity, professionalism and partnership. And I think when I joined the CIH back in May last year, it was that partnership approach that really jumped out at me. So most of our members are predominantly in the UK. We operate mainly in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And we partner with organisations in other parts of the world. So I know that there are similar challenges and similar roles, particularly in Commonwealth nations. So, but I've also got really close links with our cousins in the United States. We've had meetings with organisations in Australia. And it's so that we have that larger perspective, but it's very much by working in partnership with other organisations, because we certainly feel that we're much more stronger together. So in terms of our strategic priorities that we have, our key strategic priorities are here. So it's ensuring that we have a sustainable organisation, and we have gone through some real challenges internally within CIH. So ensuring that we're a sustainable organisation for anybody is absolutely crucial. So this is where, certainly my executive role has been extremely challenging. And we always like to do more for our members and for public benefit. And doing that within, some of those challenges, I'm sure people on the call can relate to that as well. But it's really important that we have a sustainable profession, and this is an area that has become a key board priority for us, because the work of environmental health practitioners, wherever they may be working, is absolutely critical. If we don't have strong environmental health across our communities, we are going to see a rise in infectious diseases. We are going to, we're going to notice it within our communities. So we already know that there's statistics that are coming through that are showing rises in food poisoning, foodborne disease, and so on. So those impacts are very real, and environmental health practitioners, as I'm discovering, it's very difficult to get them to talk about the work that they do, because it very much goes on under the radar. But if they're not there and they're not practicing, we're all going to know about it. So ensuring that we have a sustainable profession into the future is an absolutely critical part of the work that we're doing. And I am going to talk in some detail about that, because that's where those on the call may well be able to help us. And of course, we need a sustainable world. So the work that we do cannot just be within our borders. By working together in partnership around the world, certainly a lot of the work that we do in environmental health, is global work. So air quality, air pollution, those type of aspects, we cannot just look at what's going on in our backyard. We've got to think wider in respect of that. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about sustainability, and I'm sure people on the call will know about this, but we do talk about sustainability an awful lot. And the definition from the UN is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to be there to meet their needs. And I think the word sustainability is very much being captured by the environmental agenda, But actually from a business perspective and we know that organisations care deeply about business risk and the broader aspects of organisational risk. And organisations that are more focused on their risk, on social sustainability, thinking about how that links into their governance, we know are organisations that are more resilient. So in terms of the UN sustainability goals, because of the broad church that environmental health really covers, we're able to map all of the UN sustainability goals across the work that we do. So it just starts to call into real focus just how important the role of environmental health is across our communities. One of the aspects that I often think back to is when I was a very young student, and I remember in my first week of lectures being told that preventative measures to provide clean water, sanitation, decent homes, to reduce pollution and provide safe food and places to work has saved more lives than any medical breakthrough. Now, I don't know if there's any statistics to back up that claim. But for me, that's been a real driver across my career since my early days. And, you know, we know how much we invest in curing and treating illness and disease. But actually, if we can turn that tide and really start to focus on prevention and look at it, in the next slide, I'm going to show how this all starts to really link together. You know, curing and treating illness is a costly exercise. So a lot of the work that we're doing is to really start to address that health versus wealth dichotomy, if you like, where organisations become very focused on finance, and actually they shouldn't be separate issues. If we can create a healthy environment and healthy communities, that's going to give us a much healthier economic society as well. And there's a lot of new roles that are starting to emerge from the environmental health sector. So it's an exciting time for us, but not without its challenges, which I will go on to talk about. So the power of our profession. So environmental health consists of 5 main pillars. So environmental protection, so looking at air quality, water quality, land pollution. So we have environmental health officers working in local authorities that deal with community pollution issues, contaminated land. And so environmental protection is a massively wide area. It also impacts on planning as well. So environmental health practitioners get very involved in the planning stage. So if you're building something new, environmental health officers, particularly local government, will get very heavily involved with planning. And some of the work that we're doing is to really think about planning and kind of think about it in reverse. So how can we create communities that consider those aspects of environmental health at the design stage? So we all know, you know, good design can eliminate or reduce risk significantly. So there's a really close link between all aspects of environmental health, but particularly environmental protection in respect of planning. Food safety and integrity. So I started off my career, which many people may not know, as a food safety specialist working for a local authority, so going into food establishments to and there's lots of close links between food safety and health and safety, and we're looking more and more now at food safety cultures. So you've probably all seen the schools on the doors when you go to a restaurant, and that would have been undertaken by an environmental health officer from a local authority, but we also have a large number of environmental health practitioners that are working in the private sector as well, within large organisations, hotels, those kind of things, and also in governmental organisations. So we are co-regulators in that regard with Food Standards Agency. We're co-regulators in terms of environmental protection with the Environment Agency. Housing and our communities, environmental health practitioners will ensure that people are living in decent housing standards, and that really can impact across all of the pillars of environmental health. And we see that as a fundamental basic human right, that people should have decent shelter. Public health, another really, really broad church. We have members working in some really interesting fields in respect of public health, and our members were very much on the front line in respect of COVID. And I think we were all, we can all describe where we were when that hit. I think anybody with health in their job title at the time, there was certainly a lot for us to do and to consider. But I felt personally that I was quite well equipped to look at how we manage some of those aspects because of my environmental health background. So public health is really one of those pillars that reaches out across all of the others. We've added port health as a key priority area for us. So port health individuals actually work at our borders, so ensuring that infectious diseases are managed at our borders, and also food safety and integrity is maintained. And again, because of the changes that have happened within Brexit, there's a lot of political movement in that area. So we have a range of members that work with us, and many of them, just like in the health and safety world, may well focus on one particular aspect. But for me, the real power in what we're doing is when we start to look at environmental health across all of those pillars, and they are absolutely linked. So from an organisational perspective, they're linked as well. So to give you an example, some work that we are working on at the moment is in respect of housing standards, and looking at, for example, energy standards within our organisations. So within housing. So those the most vulnerable in society tend to be living in poor standard housing that's probably leaky housing, so it's very difficult to heat and keep warm. And those are the people that are probably working in organisations where they might be lower paid. In that case, they could well be falling out of health and safety requirements, because we know really small organisations can quite often never see a consultant, or may not even see an environmental health officer. So they could be working in poor standards in their workplaces. And if they're living in poor housing, they're probably living in locations, and we've been able to map this, where there's poorer air quality. There've also been studies that have mapped air quality and mental health. So people living in conditions where there's lower levels of air quality are more likely to, so they're more polluted, are more likely to suffer from stress and anxiety. Now, we don't quite know what the link is there, but it's actually able to be mapped. And if those people are living in the kind of housing that they struggle to heat and they're struggling with their energy bills, it means that they are probably not eating nutritionally rich food. So, you know, our members certainly see examples of, you know, people, the reasons why people don't buy fresh food is because sometimes those foods, you know, they need to be boiled and they need to be cooked. And so if you've got to boil potatoes or carrots for 20 minutes, that's 20 minutes of gas or electricity that you're using. And certainly we know that people will turn off their fridges and freezers or turn them down, which means that food safety and integrity is potentially being affected. So all of these things are completely interlinked. And from our perspective, we always have been an organisation that supported environmental health officers working in local government, because you very much get the whole range of disciplines within a local government environment. But my challenge is to actually to challenge organisations to consider all of these links as well. So the impact that an organisation can have on these aspects is profound. And I think when we're talking about ESG and we're talking about the S, that's a much more kind of untangible aspect to really grasp. And so thinking about the social part of this through an environmental health lens may well help, you know, certainly if you're looking at this, may well help you to focus on, you know, thinking from a broader aspect of risk. So as an example, if you are an organisation and you're paying, you know, not just the minimum wage, but a fair living wage, then that means that your workers are going to be able to work in, you know, better, you know, they're going to be able to afford better housing. So in turn, those benefits are going to come through in respect of that. If you're an organisation that, you know, cares about its, you know, how it deals with pollution and considers the effects within the community on its, you know, impact, its environmental impact, that's going to make a difference in terms of people as well. I know that there've been, you know, there's probably people in the on the call in the construction sector, where there's certainly been studies that show that, you know, nutritional food can really help construction workers. And, you know, there are certainly organisations that are doing more to really consider the food that people are eating. And, you know, so this is where sustainability starts to fit across the whole of environmental health. I think the interesting aspect for me as well has been looking at mental health. So as a health and safety professional, you know, I've talked extensively about mental health within organisations. But I remember when I first joined the CIH, I already had a webinar booked to talk about mental health in my first few weeks. And actually, when you start to look at mental health through an environmental health lens, it takes on a much broader perspective. So there are multiple reasons why we're talking about mental health much more than we used to. But we do know that, those individuals that are struggling in other aspects of environmental health are probably going to be struggling with their mental health as well. So that makes mental health a public health issue. And we have members, and again, they work really silently, working within governmental organisations, looking at mental health as a public health issue. So I've had some really interesting conversations with our members, as an example, who are involved in public health work and suicide prevention work. And, you know, being able to link all of that across environmental health is a really key aspect. So we really, you know, our members perform a critical role within communities, and they're really unsung heroes. But my challenge is to actually take this into organisations as well, and to start thinking about, well, actually, you know, we're considering the S, but are we really considering the S? And how can we, you know, learn more about environmental health and bring this back into our organisations? And I think linking it to sustainability, and certainly the sustainability development goals, I'm sure there are going to be people on the call who use those goals to help them drive their business strategies as well. So considering it like that. But as I'm going to move on to talk about, you know, environmental health functions within our local authorities are under-resourced, they're under strain, and they are struggling to enforce public health protection regulations. So it means that we have a real challenge on our hands. And this is really important preventative work at a time when we know that the NHS is also struggling. So in terms of our global initiatives, you know, I've kept a lot of my work going forward to really think about, you know, how we impact from a global perspective, and have worked really closely with the Capitals Coalition, looking at, you know, how can we create a more integrated approach to decision making across nature, people, society, and the economy. So, you know, all organizations, you know, care about, you know, we've got to be able to turn the lights on to function. But actually, how can we do finance differently? How can we consider all of these different aspects within our organization to actually balance out all of these aspects that everybody cares about? So we know that organizations, you know, are reporting on their environmental credentials, but actually what is the impact that they're making on those communities that they're operating within? So it's thinking from a much broader perspective, and certainly the Capitals Coalition has been looking at this for some time. But as I come into, you know, an environmental health perspective, there is a lot of work going on within our local authorities, looking at how, you know, looking at the value that environmental health brings. So I was at a great presentation recently where one of our members was able to demonstrate, well, actually invest in my environmental health team and we can save costs in respect of police responses and from social services as well, because that prevention actually in the long run will save money. And I think we all kind of probably know that. The challenge for us is that it can, you know, a lot of the work that we're involved in can be quite political. Politics fluctuates. And, you know, we very much want to take a holistic and more strategic approach in respect of what we're doing. So some of the advocacy that we're involved in, CIH is really strong in respect of this. I'm not going to go through all of this, but we have advisory panels from our members that support the different aspects. We were able to work with our members recently to campaign for a U-turn to government policy that was going to see asylum seeker accommodation taken out of the regular regulation that we have to secure decent housing. So that was a huge piece of work that lots of members were involved in, and we were able to get some really great press in respect of that. And again, it's putting people first, putting human beings first. We are an important part of the Occupational Safety and Health Alliance, which IIRSM are part of as well. So looking at rule, looking at smarter regulation. So all of these things, you know, linking into, we know that climate change is going to have an adverse, potentially have an adverse effect on public health. So those are the types of things that we're looking at. We're doing a lot of work around damp and mold. And then you've got that link within the built environment as well, certainly with housing. Just a little bit about noise. We know that noise is potentially a significant stress factor again. So, you know, individuals living in noisy environments are more likely to suffer from anxiety and stress. We've got some guidance that's going to be coming out shortly on gym acoustics. So looking at how workers within gyms are exposed to noise. So it's not just thinking about noise as something that's harmful, thinking about its community effects as well. And we very much, because health is something that's devolved within the UK, we are, you know, we get involved in not just UK and looking at it as a whole, but also in respect of the individual nation. So a couple of weeks ago, I met with officials in Stormont, and so Northern Ireland have just been able to form a new government, and we've been able to meet with representatives there to really push the work that we're doing in respect of environmental health. And there's lots of work that's going on, certainly in terms of public port health is very challenging in Northern Ireland. So again, we are there to support people and communities in that regard. And equally in Wales as well. So we've got lots of work going on there. I'm going to be speaking at the South Wales Alliance conference in Swansea with our president in a couple of weeks' time. And we've also got a conference coming up in Leeds as well in the summer, into the summer. So lots going on around the nations too. So I'm very busy with our stakeholder. We have, because environmental health is such a broad topic, I'm very involved with looking at our stakeholder engagement. We have over 200 stakeholders on our stakeholder mapping. So we've got a real challenge to ensure that we're working with stakeholders that, you know, can become partners, we can become partners with and really push our aims and objectives. So in terms of our priorities for 2024, we're working really closely with our members to understand, you know, what do they see as our policy priorities. And we have, you know, thinking forward to the general election, we're actually liaising with policymakers within government to really push the agenda in respect of the work that we're doing. And certainly, you know, we know how to get the press headlines in respect of some of the work that we're doing. Part of the work that I've undertaken is to build our advisory panels. So certainly I think this is probably a hangover from the time that I spent at IOSH. very, very keen to involve our members in all of the work that we're doing and the decisions that we make. So we've created advisory panels across the pillars of environmental health, who really start to drive forward our policies. So they help us to define our policy positions. Increasingly, we're getting members involved with writing blogs, speaking on our behalf, and it's kind of building that whole movement around environmental health and bringing it out to a whole new audience. But we have some real challenges. So our challenges are in respect of our pipeline. So it's very much a profession that is, is sliding, is that even though it's a very purpose-driven profession, and certainly those of us that have worked in environmental health feel, that it's an area that's, it's given us so much. We don't have the pipeline that we need. So we're working, our main strategic priority across 2024 is around capacity and capability. So if there's anybody here in the audience who has young people or who fancies a career move, then, we certainly want to hear from you. So we are working frantically to really tackle those workforce challenges that we have at the moment. But there are some great opportunities as well. And I think one of the challenges is that when I left local authority work back in the 90s, we all went to work for a local authority, but now there are so many more opportunities. And I had a great environmental health day earlier on in the year at Birmingham, really demonstrating that wealth of different professions that someone with an environmental health background can get involved in. And of course, part of my work is to increase visibility across the profession, and we've certainly done that in 2023. But I've been saying 2024 is going to be the year we make environmental health famous. But yeah, we have some real challenges on our hands. And the Food Standards Agency issued a report in November that said, we are at a critical stage. We need environmental health officers within our local authorities who are regulating standards. We need to have, that stick. Some people need to have a regulatory, need to see environmental health officers to actually ensure that they have those standards. And certainly one of our closest partners is our trading standards colleagues, which, partly why we've got a joint conference coming up with them in Leeds in June. But we have a real challenge around our university places, and we're losing our university courses. So we need new students to be coming into those university places to keep them going. And there's lots of reasons for that low intake of members. Certainly, if we lose places if we lose our university courses in places like Wales, we could lose a pipeline to environmental health practitioners in Wales. So, it's a real concern for us. So what we're doing, it's a key theme for our president this year. We've pulled together a workforce satellite panel with a very, very broad number of our stakeholders across that, and we are releasing policy. So we've got short, medium and long-term goals that we're heading for in respect of this. We're going to issue a final report within 100 days of a new election, and it's a key ask for, we're making policy members aware that we're at a critical stage in terms of our profession, and we need to be creating that pipeline. So we have lots of levels of membership. Anybody can join as an affiliate. In order to become, to move through the grades, there is a requirement to have an environmental health qualification. So we very much have a big tent approach where anybody who's interested in the profession can get involved, and those with a specific environmental health profession really occupy that kind of VIP area, if you like, able to look at that broad cross section of work. We register environmental health practitioners. So we hold registers. So if you're on the register, you don't necessarily have to be a member, but that kind of sets the standard for the work that everybody does. So getting involved is very easy. We're going to be launching a we're going to be launching a membership engagement survey coming up. We have a great publication called EHN that talks, that is issued to our members. Again, that's part of the work that I do to make that really super relevant for everybody working across environmental health. And it's really encouraging our members to get more involved as well. And we have a great conference coming up in Leeds, which we're very much looking forward to. And that's going to be, we're going to be, so our training standards colleagues always have a 3-day conference each year, and we're joining forces with them to actually input some environmental health content into that on the 19th and 20th of June. And I would say if you are interested in coming to that conference, have a look at the website. If you already are a member of the CIH, we're actually making it free to some of our membership levels. So have a look at that. I'm looking forward to it, but also it's going to be my first really big face-to-face event for the CIH. So the events crew here are working really hard on that to create some great topics to discuss across the environmental health arena. So that's kind of a whistle-stop tour of environmental health, but I guess my challenge is for those in the audience to really think broader in respect of the S that is social sustainability. So yeah, back over to you, Sue. Have I got any questions?
Right, just as we wait for some of the questions to come in, just a couple of things. Thanks ever so much, Louise, for that engaging presentation about all the things you're doing and all the sort of the broadest areas of the environmental health actually reaches. So just a couple of questions from me, really. Sure. Whilst we wait for the audience to put their questions in.
Come on, there must be some questions for me.
Okay. So thinking about environmental health and its impact on corporate risk, what do you think are the key points to actually consider when thinking about that area?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And as I said earlier, I have an executive role within the CIH. So, our corporate risk register is something that, I constantly am looking at and examining. And I think there's probably, I think the main aspect is reputational risk. So certainly if you are working within an organization where you predominantly sell food, you do not want to have a food poisoning outbreak, or you don't want to be you don't want to be in the headlines for something negative around that, and that starts to become that reputational risk issue and area is very, very tangible, because we're all linked socially, and as soon as something happens we all know about it. So and again, you can map that across environmental health. So if you're an organization that's causing and creating pollution within your community, or one of our members did a great presentation recently where an organisation has, you know, again, it kind of links into planning. They'd actually built very close to a school, and they were, you know, emitting high, you know, pollution. They were polluting the air around the school, and that becomes a really, really negative. You know, that is a real reputational risk. So I think that, you know, as well as the social sustainability pieces, I think reputational risk, you know, these things can become really big headlines very, very quickly. And I think you know, particularly large organizations in rural communities have a really important role to play in how those communities thrive. And if, you know, if we can encourage organisations to actually think of the wider aspects of risk, which is why I'm so pleased to be here, so because I think, you know, that broader church perception of risk really fits with the work that we're doing around environmental health.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And then the next question links to a question that's been put through from one of our audience members today. So how do environmental health professionals engage with others across an organisation to highlight the risks that they identify? And somebody said that as an OSH professional, it's really highlighted the crossover with their environmental health colleagues. So how do we get that joined upness better?
Yeah, I mean, that joined upness is really important, isn't it? And I think, so those of us that work across environmental health, you know, we can naturally start to get that joined up. It's not, and it, you know, it's about those soft skills, which aren't soft, they're power skills, and really understanding, you know, what are the corporate drivers that I can link into. So we were talking about, you know, most particularly bigger organizations really care about their broader risk, you know, perspective. They care about corporate risk. So actually looking at that corporate risk register and actually being able to, you know, tailor the message in respect of where that corporate risk register lies, I think is probably a key aspect that will help. But I'm really keen to see more environmental health practitioners working within organisations. So I was having a great conversation with somebody just before Christmas who worked for a very large chocolate manufacturer before Christmas, and we're at Easter now, so they're probably just as busy now. And they don't just look at health and safety, they also look at food safety, they look at quality. And so but they haven't got that environment, you know, as environmental health practitioners, we've got that really broad perspective on all of the different elements. So again, I think that can really help.
Okay, thank you. Lovely comment here. Great presentation, Louise. And a question to follow up. What is CIEH doing to build stronger relationships with HSE, given that we perform the same role and should be considered equal partners?
That's a really great question. And last year, I made sure that I went up to Bootle, I went to the HSE's AGM, and I asked that very question in person. So we are dual regulate, you know, lots of our members are dual regulators with the HSE, and that is something that I'm working very actively on at the moment, because you're right. You know, in terms of enforcement and the typical areas that environmental health practitioners work in, it is seen as the lower risk end, but actually environmental health officers within local authorities are probably going into working establishments. They've never seen a consultant. They, you know, they might only employ 1 or 2 people, but they could be exposing their workers to significant risk. And also on the flip side, environmental health officers are responsible for enforcing health and safety within warehousing within offices. So if you translate that into a Canary Wharf building and the finance sector, you know, there are significant risks involved with that. So ensuring that we have really close links with the HSE is absolutely critical. We actually had a great health and safety conference 2 or 3 weeks ago where we had the HSE involved in that, and we do work very, very closely with the HSE. Lots of our members are also involved in primary authority work as well. So again, there's a link with the HSE in respect to primary authority work, and that could be a whole separate session. So I won't go into detail on that.
Okay, so next question then is, as well as working with OHS, how closely do EHOs work with the Environment Agency, especially when there is a crossover in enforcement?
There is. So again, we have, the Environment Agency have got a really great graduate scheme. And, you know, I was talking about pipelines earlier on in the session, and lots of our members also work in the Environment Agency, so they don't necessarily work in local authorities. And I talked about our advisory panels, which is kind of our go-to. So if we've got a question, or if we identify a piece of work that we want to work on, we're working very closely with members in those panels. And again, we have people within those panels who are working in the Environment Agency. Now, these things are really difficult to achieve. So yeah, I mean, they're one of our stakeholder partners that we work very closely with.
Okay, thank you. So this is another question about career pipelines, I believe. So Joe said, I teach apprentices and have introduced an environmental element to this, which I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear.
Thanks, Joe.
Do you offer a membership level for those starting out in their career path? Some are considering environmental health rather than OSH.
Yeah, which is great. And we have, so there is, within England, there is an apprenticeship scheme. And the apprentice, so it's a graduate apprentice scheme, and that apprenticeship route into environmental health is proving to be really popular. So we're the first apprentices are coming off the production line as we speak. And it's proven to be an increasingly popular route to become qualified as an environmental health practitioner. So yeah, really involving that. So that's great. Thanks, Joe, for the question.
Okay, and are there is there a membership offer for that group as well?
Yeah, so we have student, so anybody who's an environmental health apprentice can be a student, and some of the work that we're doing at the moment is to get our students really involved. So we've got special places on our advisory panels for students, because, you know, they are the future of our profession. So having a perspective of the different pillars across the lens from a student perspective is really, really important.
That's great, thank you. And now this question I think is fantastic. So has the CIEH and also IIRSM, I'm certainly going to take this back into the office, ever considered engaging young people in youth groups like Scouts or Guides and working to develop skills that can be linked to one of their current badges, or even establish a new one?
Idea.
It's a great idea. I'm going to steal that one. Yeah, great.
So yeah, I don't know if the anonymous attendee has got a link into the Scouts and Guides, but one of the certainly one of the so I mentioned the Workforce Satellite Panel, which is you know, looking at some short, medium and long-term goals for us. And we know that our members are saying that they want us to talk to young people, you know, well before choosing what they're going to do at university, to really start to, you know, create some passion. You know, this is incredibly purpose-driven career where you're absolutely giving a voice to the most vulnerable in society, you know, and, you know, some of the work that I'm involved in now is really, truly making a difference. So One of our short-term goals is to ensure that we have some really good materials that will be freely available on our website, so that anybody who's involved in any of those groups can pick up the materials. We're also reinvigorating our career ambassadors program. So we'll have career ambassadors. I was swapping emails this morning because we're hoping to partner with an organisation that where leaders can actually go into schools and talk about their professions as well. So all of that is going on, but we need people to help us. So here at the CIH, we are facilitators, and we're really keen to involve members and partners to work collaboratively with us, because you know, we're all going to see a difference if we don't have a pipeline of strong individuals passionate about this area of work.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Louise. And I think those are all the questions that we've had this afternoon. So thank you to our audience for putting through some fantastic questions. Thanks again, Louise, for joining us this afternoon and sharing your knowledge with us. The recording of the webinar will be on the IIRSM website for members to view probably tomorrow. Thanks to everybody that's joined us today. We'll leave it there for today. So goodbye from us, and we hope to see you again soon at another IIRSM webinar in the future.
Thanks
Thanks so
everybody.
much, Louise.
Bye.
Bye-bye.